I'm MC Toon, the worst rapper in the world, and sometimes pretty bad at audio. So, welcome to the second round of the night. I have a debate with Zhang and Godric. And I called him Godwin a couple times as Godric. And so we have Zhang is already ready, and Godric is trying to get his stuff in there. So he's trying to get. He's having some technical challenges here. So yes, Surf. I was only muted for a short time. You want to see my T-shirt? Look at that. 10 to the negative 17 is a negative number. So says JM Truth. So. And yes, so what's going to happen is I'm going to moderate this one. Zhang and Godric found themselves somewhere, and let's see. Eric Godric is on. Yeah, oops, that's not the right. That one there. So I gotta remove that. There we go. So anyway, I will get, oops, I'm going to send an emoji here. Let's see if I can get, it's left from the previous one where everything's all goofy and big. And because we had Dazza the cameraman on for a little bit from Australia. And we had Hip Hop Hippie, who he didn't bring much. Didn't understand a lot, but I don't know. It was entertaining, painful. At least he doesn't yell at kids on playgrounds. So he's got that going for him. So, how you doing there, Jack? You are on screen now, and they can hear you.
I'm all right, I guess. Long day.
I have you a little bit cropped. I'm gonna have to fix that. There, that works. I'm gonna make myself smaller because you guys, you don't need to see my stupid face. You want to see somebody else's stupid face.
Yes. Has he accepted yet, or?
No, he has not. I don't know what's going on. So I know that Godric doesn't do much with text, so this is it's not on his. So yeah, my audio sounds a little low. It's to the max. So I've been wanting to get some change my audio a little bit, but it's a risk. So seems like Jose's is a training ground for flat earthers to step up and challenge to boss MC2. Was Hippie on Jose's a bunch lately? I don't know. Oh, there we go. We've got somebody coming.
Oh.
Hey, there we go. That looks like
Hey. Are these the guys? This is MC Toon.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
How you doing? We can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to move it over to my iPad.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Am I coming through?
It's all good. Yep. So, let me introduce a little bit here quickly. We've got Zhang, who is the representing the globe, and we've got Godric, who is representing Flat Earth, and we're going to have an epic debate tonight, or maybe just a debate tonight. So why don't you both take a chance to introduce yourselves? No, don't present any evidence at this point, but just if there's anything you want to say about yourself or what you think, go ahead. What you want to start, Jack?
Actually, Godric can go first. I need to put on my scarf reason here.
Okay.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Jack for inviting me. He found me on Quora, and we're doing some debates, some presentations, some articles on Quora. That's one of my main platforms right now. I love Quora because I feel like intellectuals could come together and debate even if we have different worldviews. And I started with the God debate, maybe 3-4 years ago. And I started with that, and I'm a stock market mentor teacher, and I've been doing that for quite a while, independent. And I'm a God proponent, so I do the atheist God debate, not live stream, but just in the questions and answers and articles. And then just in 2016, in October, I came across a flat Earth, and it did blow my mind. It was very shocking when I found out. So, flat Earth is still, I feel like it's still new for me, and I brought that to Quora too. So I'm doing stock market, flat Earth, and also um, the God debate. So that's my main three, and that's a little bit about myself. Thank you, and thank you again for inviting me, MC Tune. And I appreciate that you're the worst rapper because there's a place for everybody.
There is, yeah. I would rap, but there are limits on freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And thank you again, Jack, for inviting me. Jack's
No problem, man.
very distinguished gentleman. He's professional. He was eloquent in joining our flat Earth space. It's called Flat Earth Proponents on Quora, and I saw he has his own space debunking fake science, which is cool too. And then I guess you guys are friends. You guys know each other for a while.
A whole week.
Yeah. 1 week.
Okay.
But I have actually seen on Quora some of Jack's writings. So I guess when I actually today was looking at some stuff, I'm like, oh, I've seen you there before. So more than a week, I've at least seen your stuff there, Jack.
Oh,
So
didn't realize I was that famous. Oh no.
And I want to thank you again, MC Tune, for inviting us and having this debate.
yeah, glad.
And I
to have you.
have had a chance to see a few of your videos, MC Tune, and I want to commend you for being fair. I think you're fair, which I feel like the flat Earth doesn't get fair. They get slammed, and not and just mostly just with biased opinions, and it's rare to see a fair flat Earth debate. So I just wanted to thank you for that. I've seen a few of your debates earlier today.
Oh, thanks. All right.
So he told you it was a good one.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jack.
All right. So I am a mathematical physics major at the University of Waterloo. I guess I started looking at conspiracy stuff, I don't know, I want to say 2 years ago. And a lot of the things I came across to me were just somewhat trivial in showing why they were, in my opinion, wrong. But I realized that once I got into these discussions that after a while, when you show someone why, you say the physics says something wrong or the math says something's wrong, to them a bunch of equations just look like a jumble of squiggly lines, and to them it looks like just pure nonsense. So I guess I keep doing this in my spare time just because it's a nice exercise in trying to take a complex subject and sort of take the magic out of it, so to speak, make it approachable for the average person. Yeah.
Good. All right.
Hey.
So we don't have much structure to this. It's just going to be a discussion, and I will do my part of just keeping it fair. And otherwise, if it's all good, then I might not have to say much. So you guys go ahead and decide who wants to talk first, and go ahead.
Is it just us? Us three?
What's that?
Us three in this room, but we have a live stream of people watching.
Yeah, there is a live chat. There's right now. Let's see, how many people? There's 93 people watching right now.
Awesome. Your numbers are growing, MC Tune. Can I call you Mike or Michael?
You can call me that. You can call me Tune. I like that one, but
Tune.
just Tune. Yeah, it's all good. I've been called worse.
You've been called worse things?
Yeah, Russian Vid likes to call me Magoon. Some people call me Mac
Magoon.
Cartoon. I'm like, yeah, exactly. I do like cartoons, so I don't care. So go ahead, you two.
So it's Jack that I'm debating, not you.
Yes, yeah.
Michael's just moderating.
Okay. Thank you, Jack.
All right. So you want to start?
Did you want to start, or shall I?
You can start.
Uh, okay, so I just have 3 points. I want to make it simple. I like to talk in layman terms because I noticed that when these flat Earth debates go on, people start talking about physics and rocket science and PNS waves, and it's like you lose. I feel like you lose the whole audience. I want to debate. I want to talk to the 7 billion people in the world that have not gone to college, that don't have rocket science, they don't have calculus, they have a basic education, and I'm assuming that you don't need rocket science or physics to know if the world is round or flat, spherical or flat. Am I right?
Well, it does help
And
if you have those bits of knowledge.
and then I think physics and rocket science, which I think are questionable, just collude everything. So I want to just, for myself, I want to keep everything in layman's terms, basic terms, and I like to think about connecting with the world. Like I said, most of the world does not have physics or rocket science or any kind of crazy degrees like that. And of course, I'm not a scientist. I just go by common sense observations, and I know basic math, and that's where I am. And you're a physics guy. That's great. Congratulations. But honestly, like, you gotta think if people are really understanding you when you do these physics equations. I saw some of your equations on Quora. They're pretty impressive. Mm-hmm. So with that, the first point I like to say is that planes fly over a flat. Planes fly over a flat Earth. If you imagine a sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine a plane flying over. Let's say we're going from Chile to China, right?
Sure.
Chile, China is about halfway around the world, about 12,000 miles, right?
Uh-huh.
So you're gonna have to go. This is the sphere. You're gonna have to go around like this.
Yeah.
See how I'm arcing and curving?
Uh-huh.
Okay. But when I talk to the pilots, hey, I noticed that your tail is not tipped up and your nose is not tipped down ever. And they go, yeah, we just fly flat, man. And I go, wouldn't you have to arc around the curve, go tip the nose down and the tail up? Mm-hmm. And they said, no, man, if we tipped the nose down, we would fly right into the ground. So that's my first point. And if it was that the plane was flying flat, and I know they stay to like a latitude to where they stay to a height from the ground, right? So that makes sense. But to do that and to not arc around the ball, going, let's say we start at 0 degrees, right, on the ball, we're going around to 180 degrees, then you're at the other side, right?
Yeah.
And we'd have to arc all the way around that ball. So the question to you would be like, where's the arc? Where does the plane dip around?
Uh-huh.
And how much does it dip? And that's basically my first point. If you want to take it from there.
Okay, sure. So here, let me just pull up present mode so I can actually get my OneNote up. Here, give me 1 sec. Come on, work with me.
And if we're not dipping, then we're just flying flat over a flat Earth, and that's my point. It's just a real basic common observation. I noticed when we take off, we do go up, and when we land, we go down. But in the middle, we're not dipping.
So can you see my screen right now?
Yes, it looks
yes.
Good. All right, cool. All right.
New section 1, 2.
Go here. Here, can you guys see that?
Yes.
I just drew a circle here. You should be able to see that. So if I have a plane that's
is that a circle?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a circle. It's probably a little off, but
It's like an oval. I'm just saying. And if you're gonna do an oval, why don't you do it the other way? So it's at
it's probably
it's
going to be
not
perfect.
wide
So,
because you're making it
four.
more flat. I'm just saying.
All right, all right, all right.
It was oblate.
Better.
There we
Okay,
go.
but
The
better.
this thing's not supposed to be to scale, so it really doesn't matter. It's just supposed to be something as like a visual reference. So if you start at some point and you're going this direction, here, let me get that up. So that's your vector for your direction of the plane. You do in fact have to change your pitch just to get the nose to go down. The thing though is that you can do this with trim. So in other words, the autopilot will just automatically deviate the elevators just a tiny amount just to get that downwards angle going. If you were to try and do this manually, you would just make a mess of it because the angle that you would have to do it at any given point in time is so small. There's no way you wouldn't overcompensate for it. The angle is next to zero because basically the radius of the Earth is so large. But there is, in fact, some downwards pitching. You can, in fact, leave the pitch to, or you can leave the trim to zero and just try and let the plane go straight. And basically, if I was to visualize this, let's say this block mass is basically the plane, has some mass m. Now, there's two vertical forces acting on this. There's the lift being generated by the wings that want to pull it up, and there's the downward action.
Who's got the airplane going overhead?
It's not me. Okay, so the thing about the force of lift is that it's basically dependent upon the air density. And air density, here, let me just write this. Air density, it decreases with altitude. Let's go back to our little image here. If the plane is at this point here, is not to scale, but it's just for visual reference, because I need to over-exaggerate this. That distance, that altitude, is greater than this altitude. So the air density here is going to be a lot less. And therefore, if your object starts in what's called equilibrium, meaning the forces act all balance out, then after gaining just a little bit of height, that force of lift is going to be slightly smaller than the force of drag, and that's just going to pull the plane back down. The thing about this, though, is that this is an ideal system. So, in other words, you don't have things like turbulence. You don't have, say,
I'm sorry. Did you say pull the plane back down? I just want to make sure I heard what you said. How does the plane pull back down?
Because there's a force of gravity acting on the plane.
Okay, so are you saying that gravity is making it turn around the ball? Is that what you're saying? I just want to be clear.
Gravity will always pull something towards the center of the Earth.
Right, but that would mean the plane's getting pulled down on a level down, not the nose tipping down. Pulling down would not get you around the ball, right? Because you have to arc the nose down. Am I right? Just check.
Well, no, because here's the thing.
If
the center
circle,
of
we're flying on a circle.
Yeah.
So
let me finish.
If you're saying that gravity would pull the plane down, okay, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
Right. The thing about any commercial airliner is that the center of mass is somewhere around the middle, whereas the center of lift is somewhere towards the back of the plane. And so basically the center of lift acts almost like a pivot point, and when gravity pulls down, it's going to cause a little bit of what's called torque, which causes the plane to rotate.
Wait. You said torque causes the plane to rotate? Is that what you said?
Yeah, torque causes rotation.
Can you explain torque for everybody?
Okay, sure. So, yeah, let me just draw another rectangle here. Let's say that this is a lever, and it's pivoting around this point. So that's our pivot point. And let's say I push on it in this direction with some force. Now that's going to cause this bar to rotate in a counterclockwise direction, and that thing that causes it to rotate is known as torque. So it's a combination of the distance from the pivot point to where the force is being applied and the actual force itself.
Okay.
Now, what I do want to mention is that some planes, they have their center of lift and center of gravity basically right on top of each other. And in this case, it gets a little messy. So what will happen is your plane will, here. let's say that this is level, meaning it's parallel with the surface of the Earth. The plane's nose is going to start pointing upwards, and that increases what's called the angle of attack, which is this angle here. That increases the lift, which makes up for the difference in lift because of air density. And this will keep going until it gets to the point where it's just unsustainable and the angle of attack is so large that creates too much drag. And from that point on, the plane will once again fall back down. Only this time it's going to fall either without rotating or tail first, which is why most aircraft, they don't have their center of lift in front of the center of gravity. All right. I think that covers
cool.
that.
Will you explain how it gets around the ball without dipping?
Without dipping, well, it would obviously have to change its orientation, but I just explained how it does that.
Because of gravity and because of torque.
Yep, and because of some trim in the control surfaces on the aircraft's part, which is usually managed by a computer.
Right. I like how you say it's managed by the computer, and you mentioned earlier autopilot. But with the autopilot, if it was managed completely by the autopilot, would the autopilot be dipping around the ball? Am I right?
Yeah,
not
it would
going
have
flat.
Autopilot automatically gets the plane to as smooth of a flight as possible while maintaining airspeed and altitude. And so even if it approaches, say, an updraft where the air is moving upwards, it's going to want to push the plane upwards. It will then just compensate by pitching the nose downwards to make up for the difference.
That's right. That's right. It goes up. It goes up in the wind drift, and it comes downward to balance it. But I didn't hear you say it dips around the ball from 0 to 180 degrees for 12,000 miles, half around the supposed ball. I didn't hear you say that the plane dips around the ball. Did you?
From a combination of all the factors I've just listed, the plane will constantly pitch downwards at what is more or less a constant rate.
The plane will constantly pitch downward.
What's causing the pitch downward?
No. The plane will constantly pitch downward. Is that what you said?
It needs to constantly have some sort of change in its angle.
Okay. Have you ever seen the tail of the plane constantly tip up and the nose constantly tip down when you're flying, honestly?
Okay, well, first of all, it wouldn't have to tip up, it would actually tip down, but that's a thing for another time. So here.
The back of the plane wouldn't go higher and the nose wouldn't go lower if it's arcing around the ball?
Yeah, can you see my screen still?
Yes, the screen's coming out. Good.
There's the tail of the aircraft, and I don't know. Here we go. When you pitch the tail upwards, what's going to happen is the air is going to be deflected upwards, and it's going to push the tail downwards. That's going to cause the plane to pitch up, not down. So in order for this to pitch down, you actually need the tail to pitch downward, which deflects the air downwards. That pushes the air or the tail upwards and the nose downwards. And again, first of all, I don't have a good view of the tail from a window because, that's not what windows are there for. They're mainly just for like comfort, not for observing the control surface. But even if I did, the angle at which you would pitch them is so small, it would be basically unnoticeable.
Okay, it's unnoticeable.
To the naked eye, under most circumstances, yes. Because small angles, the human eye is not good for detecting those.
Okay, well, that contradicts. You saying that it continually. What was the word you used? Did you say dip or anchor down?
It would pitch down continuously.
It would what?
It would pitch down continuously.
Pitch down.
When I said you would notice, I mean the human eye would notice it. It's still there.
That's what I would think. That's what I would think. But let me tell you, I talked to a couple pilots, and both of them said we don't pitch down. We're flying flat, and they're not flat earthers. So this is credit to you guys. I don't think they can really say that if they even believed it.
Okay, if you tell a pilot to pitch down, they're going to think grab the control yoke and push forward. That is going to cause the aircraft to nosedive into the ground. They're not going to be managing this tiny amount of trim on their own. That's why they have an autopilot in the first place. And if they're in a plane that doesn't have autopilot, then they're just going to fly basically an erratic altitude pattern, and they're going to have to try and compensate for it manually. But like I said before, that's going to be very tricky because they will always overcompensate. That's the limitation.
But you mentioned if they didn't have autopilot, they fly erratic. But let's include they would always have to be pitching down constantly.
As I have said repeatedly
Yes.
now.
And would you notice that in a manual plane? You're saying you just said you didn't notice it in a big plane.
Well, it wouldn't matter what plane, the pitch that you have to induce
plane doesn't matter.
is always going to be negligible to the human eye.
Negligible to the human eye. Okay.
Yeah. You cannot discern 0.5 radians with the naked eye, or actually not radians, degrees. But that is not zero. A tiny number that's next to zero is not equal to zero.
Now you're talking numbers.
Does not equal zero.
Do you know how much the plane would? Well, let me ask you. You're a physics guy.
Yeah.
You're talking about pitching down, right? How much would the plane pitch down?
I can answer that, and I have to use calculus, and you don't want calculus.
From halfway around the world. Because you just mentioned it. I didn't get to that. If you want to get to it, that's fine.
Okay.
How much would it be pitching down? Let's go. I'm a basic guy. I go in feet and miles. Feet and miles.
Say that again?
I like to go in feet and miles. I'm a real basic guy. I don't do kilometers.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. Inches and miles, they're linear length. For pitch, you're looking at angles.
Okay, you said degrees. Here's the thing. People can't think in degrees. They don't know how much a degree is as far as feet. If I'm looking at a plane, I want to see if we're going to prove. If we're doing a debate, we're going to prove either the plane is going flat or it's dipping, pitching down. I want to know how many feet or how many miles it's dipping down.
Okay, let me make this very clear here so everyone understands this much. All right? If I was to measure this angle, I can't give that to you in feet any more than I can give that to you in seconds, because that's not the correct unit. You cannot measure angles in feet or inches. So I can give it to you in degrees, or I can give it to you in any other unit of arc, but I can't give it to you in linear length units. I can't ask you, how long is a day, and expect you to answer me in pounds.
Okay, that's okay. That's fine. But we do know how big the supposed Earth is. We do know that it's supposed to 4,000 radius and 8,000 thick. Can we agree on that?
Yeah.
We do know that it's 12,450 miles from North Pole to South Pole.
Yeah.
Estimately, approximately, and we do know that from 0 to 180 degrees on a ball is halfway around, and we got to go around and get to the other side.
Okay.
So we're arcing around consistently, and what you said is constantly, and we went around 360 degrees and ended up right back where we started.
Sure.
The supposed ball is 24,900 miles. Sorry. So 24,900 miles. So we do know the distance. We do know the measurement in miles, and if you want to break it to feet, we do know the miles in feet, and we do know every degree. If you divide 24,900 miles divided by 360 degrees, you get 69. Let's say 70 miles, 69 miles per degree.
Yeah, correct.
So you're the physics guy. How many miles dip are we going around, or how many feet?
Miles dip. Okay, here I'm just gonna draw a few diagrams, and I want you to explain exactly what you mean, because the terminology you're using doesn't make any sense. Do you mean the distance to go around? Do you mean the angle? Like, what do you want here? Do you want the rate at which the plane pitches down at any given moment in time?
Okay, thank you. And I don't mean to pester you with this, but I want to make at least we can agree on a simple thing, okay?
Okay.
So let's try this. Please bring the circle back, and please draw a dot at the 0 and a dot at 90 degrees.
Dot at 0 and 0, 90.
Okay, now draw a line from there.
Draw what lines?
Draw a line from both, from the 0 to the 90, a straight line, please.
Okay.
Okay, that's the dip. You have to curve around that much.
That's not the dip. That's a distance between 2 points.
But hang on a second. I wasn't finished. I'm not saying you can fly through the earth. I'm not saying that. I'm saying you have to arc around that amount. And let me finish this point so I get my thought clear.
Sure.
This amount is occluded from your vision. If you're standing at 0 at the North Pole, looking down to the equator. This amount of Earth is in your way, and here's a problem with the whole problem with the flat Earth global debate. We're seeing distant objects, so where's the curve? Where does it bend? And I'm saying the plane flies flat. You're saying it constantly pitches down, but you can't tell. So
Not that you can't tell. It's for a given, like, if I were to look at the control surfaces, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the trimmed controls and the non-trimmed control surfaces, just because it's a very tiny adjustment.
Okay, well, what I'm saying is this amount is what's occluded from view. This amount is the dip. And let's do one more thing. Let's draw a dot at 180, please.
Okay.
And then draw a line straight from 0 to 180, please.
Sure.
This is the curve of the supposed Earth, okay?
That's not what curve means, but okay.
You're going from one side to the other. Now, we know that we can't draw a straight line. We can't go through the Earth. You have to go around this arc. Let's say we went perfectly around in the arc, perfectly. The nose of the plane would have to constantly dip down, yes or no?
Yes, and I can calculate that figure for you.
Okay. Now, if you put 12,450 miles at the bottom, just write that down. 12,450 miles at the bottom.
12,050 miles.
450.
450.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
And then we're gonna put 6,225 at 90.
Okay. Give me one sec. 6,000 what?
Let's put it out here.
Oh, okay. You want arc length? Okay, so here.
Where the dot is 6,225.
6,325.
225.
225.
225. And let's go to 270, please. At other side, put a dot there. Yeah. What's that? 18,650. Is that right? Double check my math.
Did it for you.
And then at the top, we're at 24,950. Sure. Thank you, by the way.
No problem.
And this is a guesstimate. It's not exact.
Right.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, when you go from 0 to 90, I'm calling it a dip. You can call it a different word. You probably have a sciencey word for it. You're all sciencey.
Okay.
That's the dip here. That amount of curvature is supposed to be in your way if you're looking at the North Pole to the equator.
Okay.
And I don't know how much that is. That might be, I don't know, 1,000 miles maybe.
You mean this line here?
Yeah. Let me finish. Okay. If you went down here. Now bring that line. Can you swing that line all the way down to the 180? Now, I said at 90 degrees, about 1,000 miles is occluded. But when you come down here, what's occluded, what's in the way of seeing distant objects, is 4,000 miles of the Earth, which is the radius. Okay.
8,000 miles because it's twice the radius.
No, because I'm not counting the distance between the North Pole and South Pole. I'm counting what's in your way.
This is all in your way.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're clear. Please go back to the 90.
Okay. Here, let me just.
Draw a little line between the distance in the middle, between the line and the surface of the supposed globe. Not down there, please. Over here, from the line to the surface of the globe.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you mean. Here.
That's the dip. That's the right. Thank you. That's what I'm calling the dip. Okay, because these things are supposed to be. This is supposed to be the curvature of the Earth we're looking for, and this is why Flat Earth and Roundup had this argument, and I've never seen it really conquered or challenged. So I just want to bring it up. Maybe you can explain it. Maybe you can't. Maybe geometry doesn't have the capacity to explain it. That's fine. But let's see where this goes. So that distance I'm saying is supposed to be in your way. Okay. That distance. So when we go down to 180, I'm not counting the distance that you have to travel there. I'm counting what's in your way. If you swoop that line down, it's only 4,000 miles. And so my point is that it's not 8,000 miles, it's 4,000 miles. And then if you let's do and you did the line in the middle, which is great. And you agree that's 4,000 miles to the center, right?
That's roughly, yes. R is 4,000.
Now draw a line from 0 to 270, please.
0 to 270.
Now, if we're going to fly a plane from North Pole or from Chile to China, or from the North Pole all the way to the South Pole, or at the South Pole, we achieve 12,450 miles, right? And I'm saying the curvature is 4,000 miles, okay? Now, when you get to 270, what I'm calling this dip, I want you to measure, is going to be everything from that line all the way down, from that line on top left, go all the way down to the bottom right. Not that, at the opposite that,
The what?
Under the opposite that, under the line.
Here?
Yeah, all the way down. All the way down to the edge of the supposed globe.
You mean like that?
Right, but erase the eye. Erase the eye on the left side, top left.
All right.
Yes, thank you. And put the line from the right, but erase the start at the go down. Go to the right. There. Go back. I'm calling that the dip going around the supposed globe. Okay? So that's what I mean by dip. Okay? Because you have to arc around all that matter to get back to the top. And then once you hit 360, you don't have to draw this because it's obvious. Now you've gone around the whole world, and the dip would be 8,000 miles.
Okay.
Now we agree that you're curving, right? You're curving around this supposed ball. We do agree on that, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the question to you is, how much? You said that the nose is constantly dipping down. So how much is it dipping? Can't we go feet? We have the measurements. We have the degrees.
So you want? I want to clarify here. You want this length?
What's the arrow? What's the yes?
Okay.
And then once we get back to 360, it's the whole globe through 8,000.
What? 8,000 is the diameter of the Earth.
Right, because we've gone out and came back.
Mm-hmm.
So have not we crossed the diameter of the Earth?
Cross the diameter of the Earth. You've gone all the way around. That means your position is changed by some range d, which is the diameter of the Earth, and then you've gone all the way back.
No, don't say it. We've done one complete circle in one direction.
Yes, we've done one complete circle. We can agree on that much.
And we've arrived at the top. So my question to you is, how much dip is that? How you can say feet, you can say miles. And what we're saying is we can't detect it. We can't detect anything. And you said, well, you can't tell. Well, shit.
You can't tell the pitch in the control surfaces. So, man, what is even going to be the line that you want to measure now? You literally just don't understand your question, mate.
Well, we drew a diagram. I might not have the right term, but I'm asking how much the plane dips. If I was to jump off this bed, I would dip about 2 feet, hit the ground. So just think the bed is the Earth. How much is it dipping?
You move 2 feet.
But I lowered my elevation by 2 feet, so I call that a dip.
Okay, you will call that a dip. Fine then.
And we're lowering, we're going elevating down around, right? We're elevating down constantly around this supposed globe. So how do we measure it? You kind of just said you can't tell, which is to me
you can't tell the pitch in the control system. But here, let me just draw out something here. So you said if you are on your bed and you jump down, you'll call that a dip. That's a dip of 2 feet. Okay. Now here's how I would formalize that. You have some height final and some height initial. Okay. Your change in height is equal to -2 feet. That's how I would say that. So if you want to ask, what's the dip, if you want to call it that, from when you start to when you end, in other words, what is h final minus h initial? That's 0 because you just went a full circle. You got back to exactly where you started.
But you went we went one direction from North Pole to the South Pole and back. So
Well, not exactly. You went
we traveled in a
clockwise, but
circle,
your
but
direction changes.
we've also arced down around this circle.
Yes.
Do they not have a word for that in physics or geometry?
The distance, the change in height. Yeah, we call that a change in height.
Okay, but we know that there's 6,000 miles to 90 degrees. Okay, I'm not counting that because you can do a circle, right? We're not counting the 12. We know we traveled 24,950 miles around Earth. We know that, supposedly.
Yeah. That's the arc.
So I'm not counting that. I'm counting the arc, the curve. Or you can say what's occluded, what's in your way when you look from 0 to 90. That much mass is in your way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes or no?
This is here. That is the distance between that point and that point.
We might have to work on it.
If you want to call this the distance occluded, fine. Call it whatever you want. I can tell you what that. Oh shit! I just deleted my circle. I can tell you what that distance is. I can calculate that for you if you want. It's trivial. But if you want me to find that same portion for after going a full circle, the answer is going to be 0 because you start exactly where you end where you started.
So you're saying you didn't go around the circle? You didn't arc
you
down?
You did go around the circle, but you
went around a circle. 25,000 miles. You didn't arc down, so it's 0?
It doesn't matter what the arc length of a circle is. If you go around the entire thing and you, by definition, end where you start, the change in position is 0.
Okay, let me say, I think I understand what you're saying. Let me say one thing. I didn't tell you to stand at North Pole and start walking around the circle.
It doesn't matter how I do it. I don't care if I have to
wait. This
is important.
This is important. I didn't tell you to look. In this case, it's looking east. I didn't tell you to look east and then turn around and then you've arrived. I didn't say that. I said you're going to go around the whole supposed globe and finish at 360 degrees. And then I asked you, how much does it arc down? How much does it dip? You can say pitch. You can say dip. You can say constantly pitching down. How much? How many miles? How many feet? If it was a flat line, right, you would just go flat.
Okay,
but we're not going flat. I'm
going to have to
down around a circle.
I'm going to have to interrupt here for a second.
Jeez.
So I'm sorry. This is kind of going nowhere. It's an angular dip. It's not measured in feet, just like you don't measure you don't measure time in kilograms.
Time,
yeah, exactly. So we're gonna need to move on from this one because I think Jack, if I'm right, you are saying the plane's nose does dip as it travels around, and there's a quantity to that dip. Every 69 miles it dips by 1 degree. 1 degree is about this much. It's not much.
He said he couldn't tell. He said you wouldn't be able to tell.
It's indistinguishable because there's other things going on in the plane, of course, turbulence and stuff. So those are much larger variances.
Yeah, but we're not counting turbulence. We don't have to include turbulence.
Yeah, but
we're trying to figure out if the nose is dipping or not. If it's going flat, it's going over a flat plane.
And Jack is
saying, I'm gonna have to disagree with that. You can't tell.
It certainly
that makes
does
no
dip.
sense.
So, all right.
Just move on to another point.
Yeah,
let's do that. Okay.
So hold on a second here. I've got surf. So somebody was asking. So Jack, when you say what word? It sounded like twerk.
Torque.
What's that? Torque.
Torque.
Yeah, you say torque, and everybody in the chat hears you say twerk. So Surf
torque,
Surf paid me $5 to not twerk. So there we go. I will not be twerking. And Spike.
I'm very disappointed you will not be twerking.
No, do not be disappointed. Be very happy. Spike Smith. Spike says isn't certain about your credentials. You claim to be a stock market guy, and then you didn't like it when the numbers.
My credentials, okay.
Yeah, numbers didn't come up and got confused by units.
I don't have credentials. My credentials are I graduated high school. I went to some college. I didn't get my degree. I took some business courses in college, and it's kind of interesting because had I got my degree, had I had to put those 4 years into a university or a college, I might have been bamboozled to think that that is my pride, my degree. I can make more money working for somebody else, and I might have been indoctrinated 4 more years, and I might believe in the ball, and I wouldn't be here. So, what I want to say and I think, in tune, Mike, I think that you gotta understand, flat earthers, a lot of them aren't educated in degrees,
We can agree on that one.
I feel like, I feel like when you start getting into physics, I feel like they just warp your mind because they're telling you stuff like, I mean, in physics, you can explain how an elephant can hang off of a cliff by a daisy. Now,
No, you can't.
That's not true at all.
I don't know how. Well, apparently there's an equation.
Well, the thing
No
about physics
equation
is
You're going to say I'm wrong. Okay, so
things
so
are
then
testable, of course.
I misread the equation. I believe that there's an equation. I misread that. I'm mistaken. Okay, but yeah. So, anyways, I do trade the stock market. I've been in the stock market for 25 years, going on 30 years now. I'm independent. I'm a stock market mentor, teacher, and I can tell you how to have a portfolio make 5% a month and 20%, 30% a year consistently. I can teach about covered calls, how to collect dividends, how to manage your account, trading, how to fire your job. But I don't do physics. I'm a basic. I have basic questions, and thank you for inviting me. I want to speak for not really the flat earthers, but just all people have basic questions about the flat earth debate and why there is a flat earth debate. And my point here is, hey, where's the dip? And you're saying you can't tell. So okay, how much time do we have for this debate, by the way?
We have about generally about 2 hours. It's up to you if you need to go quicker than that, but I like to cut it off at 2 hours. So we're at 50 minutes now, so we have an hour and 10 minutes left. If you're both good with that.
Okay.
I
So
just
how
have
about
2 more
the-
points. You might have some points. I have 2 more points. You can have some points. I don't know if you want to take mine or yours.
I think maybe Jack's turn. And Jack, we only see the top of your head. It's nice hair, very nice hair. There you go. There you go. So, and you are still presenting. So I don't know if you mean to do that, but how about you take present something, Jack, and
Sure.
see what we see.
Okay, so what I'm going to draw for you is basically a representation of the Earth and the axis of rotation. Here, shit. Yeah, give me 1 sec. Here we are. And this obviously isn't to scale, but we'll work with it as visual representation. Okay, so that line is what's called the axis of rotation. So in other words, the world spins about this axis. Now, here's something that you can do, and that anyone in the chat or in the audience, Eric, you can do this yourself as well. Stand outside. Okay, this is a terrible way of drawing on a 3D. Here we go. Stand outside. Here. And just watch the sun. Don't look at it directly with your eyes. If you can, we have something called an equatorial mount for a telescope. Basically, it only rotates on what's called one axis of rotation, and it allows you to track the sun as it moves across the sky. Now, a very common flat Earth argument that you will hear is if this is a top-down view of the Earth, because it's a flat projection, as they say, and you have the sun going around in a circle, if you stand on the surface of the Earth and you look up at the sun and you try and track it as it comes across, if the world was flat and the sun was coming around moving in circles, then you should be able to see sort of moving around, and you need to rotate in 2 axes of rotation. Because as it comes closer, you're going to look further upwards, and you're also going to have to rotate counterclockwise or clockwise, depending on where you are in the world. But 2 axes of rotation. That's a geometric property of a flat Earth. There's no getting around it. I don't care if you're supposed you're in a magical universe or not. Mathematics it transcends reality. Pi will always be pi. The what they call it? The arc length of a circle will always be the angle multiplied by the radius. And in this thing, this set of two axes of rotation, in order to observe something moving above a flat Earth, that's a geometric property. There's no getting around that. Now, go stand outside and try this for yourself. It won't work. Why? Because the apparent motion of the sun is due to the Earth's rotating along one axis of rotation. And so you only need to rotate in one axis to observe the sun and track it all the way through, which is why an equatorial mount only has one axis of rotation. Right?
That's fascinating. You know what? I'm sorry. I've never used an equatorial mount. I'm not sure if you needed to explain that first.
Okay, here, let me just
do you have an equatorial mount?
No, but I have a friend who does.
You have a friend who does. Yeah. Okay, I just want to ask you, can you dumb that down so we can understand what you're saying? I missed your point. Your point is you said it doesn't work. What doesn't work?
If you tried to observe the sun and track it as it moves across the sky, you can't do that using any less than two axes of rotation, which is a requirement for a flat Earth.
Okay, so that's fine. I don't know if that's correct. Okay, but let's say that was correct, right?
Okay.
We're talking about the Earth, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about measuring the sky?
You're tracking the sun. I just want you to get something to look at the sun.
Wait, hang on
and
a
have
second.
a keep looking at the sun as it moves.
Talking about the sun. Okay, we want to know if the Earth is flat or round, and you want to go by the sun.
Well, that is one way you can show that, one, the Earth is round, because you end up in the same place after one period of rotation. That's a requirement for a spherical object, and it's rotating along one axis of rotation. And that's something that flat earthers don't like for some reason.
I don't really get it, because if I was going to measure my floor in the kitchen to put tiles in, I would measure the floor. I wouldn't measure the light above in the ceiling. And that's what I'm trying to do with the first one. I'm trying to measure how much it actually dips.
Okay.
I didn't get an adequate response on that. And you explained it, but I didn't get it.
If you go around
the sun.
If you, after one period, you end up in the exact same spot as you were before, that means you went in some sort of circuitous route. Okay? Now, we know that the Earth rotates at a constant rate because we can track the movement of the stars. And everything, including the stars, the moon, the sun, they all move at a constant rate. And that doesn't change depending on where you are on the Earth, because the apparent motion of everything that's not on the planet Earth is going to be based upon the rotation of the Earth. And in order for their apparent motion to make sense, that requires a round spherical Earth rotating along one axis.
Okay, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a response to that.
Okay. Well, how about this? You can make your next point, and then I'll do my best to respond to that then.
Thank you, by the way, and thank you for this these drawings, because I don't have that capacity yet. I think I had to work my iPad, but thank you for that. And
yeah, no problem.
If I wanted to, thank you, Jack. Jack, if I wanted to bring up NC-Tune,
yeah,
if I wanted to show a picture, can you just pull it up for me?
Yeah, you can.
On mine, because I just
yeah, if you
it would just be
send
easy.
The link to us in Messenger
it.
or on the chat, and then we'll pull it up for you.
Yeah, you can send it in Messenger, and I'll grab it.
What was that?
You can send it in Messenger on Facebook, and I can present it, or you can present your screen.
Okay, thank you.
Jack, do you want to undo your presentation there?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to do a bit. This is and I know that you've been around the block, Jack, so I appreciate that. And that you've had some flat earth debating already, so I'm not gonna be able to knock you over with some basic facts. But this is also for the people watching the channel, and hopefully we get some people new to the debate. We can get some new subscribers to. By the way, how many subscribers do you have MC tune right now?
About 3,500.
Not bad. I'm gonna pull up Lake Michigan.
Is this Chicago across Lake Michigan?
Yeah. Well, can you do it faster? Just give me the Chicago skyline across Lake Michigan. Joshua on the wiki. Ideally it's no wiki.
All right. There we go.
I did find one here. Save.
There we go. All right.
You're using the messenger. I put one in messenger. I don't know if there's. You probably got the same one.
Yeah.
Yep, I've got that on screen right now.
Can you see it?
Yep, I can. Hold on. I will present it. Here you go. You should see it now.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice picture. Okay, so my second point is we can see distant objects, and if the Earth be a ball, these objects at some point would be behind the curve of the Earth. Okay, I want to say in the past they didn't have telescopes. They didn't have the technology we have now. So they may have had some belief. My point is, they may have had some beliefs. Oh, look, your ship was behind the curve of the Earth. I want to say visual range. We might have 6 miles or 12 miles. With the telescope, once we got the telescope, maybe you can see 30 miles. I'm just guessing. Just it's see farther than the naked eye. But now we have the P900, and we can see quite farther. And we can bring these pictures. My point is, bring these pictures that went behind the Earth back into view. That's my point. In this case, we're looking at about 50 miles over a lake. And I wanted to say that you can see the tops of these buildings. At the bottom, I think, this is a good picture, by the way. I think this white line is a layer of atmosphere. By the way, do we agree that there's atmosphere on the surface of the planet? The surface of the world?
Yes.
So it would be heaviest near the surface, right? The atmosphere, and lighter as it goes up, right? So I'm gonna say this line is a layer of atmosphere which does block the very, very bottom of the buildings. But we can see everything else. We can see the lights at the bottom, the lights at the top.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, when does the building go behind the curve of the Earth?
Okay,
well, we can see distant objects, and that's the problem. We can see distant objects.
All right. Oh, here we are.
Basic and simple.
Well, actually, you know what? I got an idea. I'm going to share this. I'm going to go here. Okay.
You've had this before, right?
Yeah, I had this before, but I was better explained this time. So here, where's my height test parameterized? So you guys can see the graph, right? Okay, so let me just explain the basics here. This image has been, like, the scale between the vertical and horizontal axis, it's a little off, but it is supposed to represent a circle. So here, the radius in the horizontal is 6,378 million, or 6,378,000, and in the vertical, all the way, 6,378,000. So it looks a little oblate, but it's just because the graph's a little messed up with the scale. Now, what the green line is, it's a circle that represents a cross-section of the Earth. Now, I also have several other lines, and I'll explain what those are. And it's going to help explain Godric's little question here about why we can see distant objects and when they stop being visible. So this blue dot represents our observer. He's some distance above the Earth. Now, what we want, and I don't know if you can see this very clear. Maybe I could go back to OneNote and try and do that. But yeah, I'll just come back to this graph in a little bit. Give me a sec. Present. No. There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to over-exaggerate. This is obviously not to scale for the millionth time, but I need to over-exaggerate for it to be easily visible. So what we want is we want to draw a line that, and I'll just explain the terminology in a second. We want what's called a line that's tangent to the curve. And that was a terrible line, but here, I'm trying to do it better. So what does it mean to be tangent? So without getting into calculus, let me just draw an arbitrary curve. If some line touches the curve but doesn't go through it, the point at which they touch, both the curve and that line will have the same slope. And so what we say is that line is tangent to the curve at that point, known as the point of tangency. And then we can take the slope of that line to give us the slope of the graph. Now that's going to be important for a little bit later. So first of all, the point of tangency, if you want to move away from the math and go to real-world application, this is where the horizon is. So you're going to get two lines because you can look backwards or forwards. In fact, if I was to do this 3D, you'd have basically a little cone representing your field of view. But anyways, that is the horizon. Now, something beyond the horizon, situated beyond the horizon, if it's tall enough, the top of that object is still going to be above that line, the line of tangency, and therefore you can still see it. That is what I calculate using the parametric graph that I demonstrated earlier. So let me just go back to that, and then we can just do a quick test with here.
Good comment.
Event window, and it's yes. Okay, so here I have some object way off in the distance, and we have a line that's going through. So it's vertical for whatever object is there, and it intersects the line representing our field of view here, and then we can just calculate the distance between these 2 points. Now, because I parameterized this graph, I actually have that. So what we can do is call for the minimum height.
Let me just ask a question.
For an object to be seen, and the height that's visible. So there's the topmost height that's visible. So let's go back to here. Now you said 50 miles. That's 80 kilometers. That's what? 80,000 meters. And my keyboard.
Just to ask, do you do kilometers where you are? By the way, where are you? By the way,
I'm Canadian, so I went to the rest of the world to use an SI.
I'm in California. Where are you?
I'm in Canada.
Canada. Okay, cool.
I touched that by accident.
And they use kilometers and not miles over there?
They use kilometers everywhere but the States and 3 other countries.
Right. Thank you for that.
So if I have an observer who's 2 meters tall, and from that picture, it's clear that he's sitting on some sort of sandbank, so let's drop 10 meters. Let's add 10 meters just to represent that. Oops. And we have the elevation of some object. Okay, well, first of all, let's just see what is the minimum elevation, 358 meters. And this is disregarding atmospheric refraction, mind you. So if I have some object that's 400 meters tall, if the keyboard would actually work with me because something is wrong here. It's not 41 meters is visible. Now this disregards atmospheric refraction. And what is actually interesting, if you go and try and replicate that picture of Chicago from across the lake, sometimes, or how do I want to explain this? The portion of the buildings that are visible changes over time, like across the day. And the reason for that is because the temperature of the air above the water changes throughout the day, and so therefore the refraction you get also changes throughout the day. Now, across short distances, refraction is basically negligible. Across a distance of 50 miles, it's not. So that's
You're saying refraction, right?
yes, refraction is going to be present. But even without it, we can demonstrate that you don't need refraction for something to be visible. It just needs to be tall enough. So does that cover for you?
Well, I want to know how much is behind the curve of the Earth. And I heard refraction.
Okay, so
and when does the building go behind the curve of the Earth?
Share this with you. I've already shared this with you, actually. The minimum height, which is what was shown in the parameterized graph, that is the height that's not obscured. The remainder of that 400-meter tall object is obscured. The amount that's obscured changes with the distance.
I didn't read. I saw those numbers. I didn't read the numbers. Can you read the numbers? What's supposed to be behind the curve of the Earth at 50 miles? Is that what your point?
Okay, so for 50 miles, which is 80 kilometers, and for a 400-meter tall object, which is, I don't know, 1,200 feet, with disregarding atmospheric refraction at this distance, 41 meters of the object will be visible, and the remaining 358 will be obscured.
So for a 400-meter object,
yes.
41 meters are obscured.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? 10%?
Assuming that at the equator, where the radius is largest, you have a distance of 50 miles, you have an object that's 400 meters tall, and disregarding atmospheric refraction, yes, these numbers are accurate. The reason I went without atmospheric refraction and for the equator is this is the most extreme example. This is where the Earth's curvature has the greatest effect. If I was to let me just present in one note.
Is this your own equation that you made up on your own?
Yeah, I made it up because it's just easy to derive. It's calculus.
It's calculus. Okay. Does it equal to the Earth's curvature calculator, that 8 inches per mile squared?
8 inches per mile squared is an approximation that is god awful.
So you don't go by that. I just want to be clear.
No,
you go by your own equation.
I use the radius of the Earth and the observer height to derive the rest. I can explain to you what 8 inches per mile squared.
41. I just want to be clear. 41 kilometers. You're saying that 41 kilometers is obscured by the curve of the Earth at 50
41
miles.
meters. 41 meters. 41 meters is visible.
Right. And how many feet is that?
Multiply by 3. So 120-ish.
123 feet.
Are visible. The remaining 1,200 should be obscured. Disregarding atmospheric refraction, of course.
Okay, let's say you go to 100 miles.
Sure.
Now, how much is it obscured then? How much is the curve at 100 miles? Let's put your equation to the test. It should be. I'm just gonna say it should be more than double, because if you're curving around the ball, it's going to get exponentially farther as you go out.
Not exponentially, but it does have a nonlinear growth rate. And the minimum height, or basically the height that's obscured, is 1,700 meters.
1,700 meters times 3, 5,400 feet. Is that right?
Yes. For an observer that's 12 meters above sea level, which is 36 feet, that is the figure you will get.
Okay.
Regarding atmospheric refraction.
Okay, by the way, that's a great answer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you did your own equation, because it shows that you're not only thinking, but that you are a master of your craft.
Well, I'm not a master, but I know the craft.
Okay, and to respond to that, thank you, by the way. I have, I think I got my pick ready here. I'm going to put it in the messenger.
Okay.
just so you can respond to this.
Sure.
What this is a picture from Ireland to Wales,
Mm-hmm.
and this one is 100 miles.
I'll pull it up here. Which
Sure.
you sent just a Google search.
You can't pull the one up in Messenger.
The image.
So I had the exact one.
Yeah. So click on the link. It should work. It worked for me.
I put the link in Messenger. I think I got it right this time. Thank you for your patience, guys.
Yeah,
we can use different pictures, but I like this one because it seems to show
view of Welsh mountains from Ireland.
Yes.
Okay, hold on. All right, I'm pulling it up.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
So here's a picture from.
Okay, I'm looking at it.
From Ireland to Wales. Okay, now here's the issue. This I have this measured at 100 miles. Now, I also have these mountains measured about 3,700 feet. We come out to 4,000. Okay.
Okay.
And he just told me his theory that his equation that he made up, that he developed, that at 100 miles you'd have 5,400 feet of curvature. And if that was the case, these mountains should be completely hidden behind the earth, completely invisible. And as you can see them with a nice layer of atmosphere there at the bottom. It's
okay, but here's what
that,
you're forgetting, Eric. That was for an observer height of 12 meters. I mean, just look at the picture. The cameraman is obviously a lot taller than that, or at least a lot higher than that above sea level than our previous example. So already you can't use the pre-existing figures because it was for different parameters.
I didn't go to 100. I admit this is not my photo. You could be a little bit high, but the mountains, I mean, I haven't measured at 3,700 feet, and you said 5,400 feet are blocked by the curve. So this is clearly like what's that? 1,700 feet beyond.
I can't even confirm your numbers right now because while you're telling me what the numbers are, I can't confirm. I don't know where the picture was taken. I don't know what mountains he was looking at. And
okay, we can work on this a little bit more, but I would say that you can see all the mountains minus a layer of atmosphere.
I don't
think that here's when you say when you see flat earth, they say where's the curve? I don't think there's a curve here. I think that whether you're low or high, you see all the mountain minus a thin layer of atmosphere, and nothing is occluded, and there's no curve, and that's my point. So why don't we just let the audience decide if there's 5,400 feet?
The audience is wondering what the observer height is.
Yeah.
So that
I really don't know, but I see some plants here at the bottom, so they're not in the sky; they're on the ground somewhere.
All right. So if you don't know the observer height, it doesn't do us much.
Yeah.
The observer height is critical.
But I'm saying, if you believe that this is Ireland to Wales, and it's 100 miles, let's say that's true, okay? I don't see any occlusion.
Well, yeah, because it's tall enough to not have that occlusion.
By the way, hang on a second. Wait, does the water bend? Let's clear up that. Does the water bend around the ball, or is it flat?
The surface of the water is not flat. That much is true.
Okay, so the water does bend around the ball.
I wouldn't say bend, but yeah, sure.
Okay, because here, according to this, it doesn't, and according to the Chicago skyline, I don't see the curvature. Now, I also want to say that Joshua on the wiki is not a flat earther, as far as I know. So I think his picture is credible. I don't think it was doctored or. And by the way, I don't think there's one more thing. I don't think that these are mirages. I've heard that, oh, it's a mirage. You know, like when they explained to Joshua and the Wiki pick on the news, which was a great pick, by the way. He's a great photographer. He said, hey, you know, the way you can see this is because it's a mirage. So let's be clear. Are these mirages we're looking at, or is this actually the mountain and the building?
I can't even confirm the height of the observer. You're not giving me much to work with here. You can't just show me pictures like, is this possible or not? I need to know what the figures I'm working with are.
Well, look at these plants down here. There's plants down here. He's probably on a little hill.
I can't look at a tree and say, yes, that is 55.2 meters.
Why don't you put in, let's say he's 500 feet. I don't know. Why don't you put in the amount of the desert?
No, sorry.
We don't know.
Sorry, science isn't done so sloppy like this. So can you find something that's a little more controlled, something where there's actually some measurements?
I'm sorry. Did you think we're doing some? I wasn't doing science. I was doing basic observations, basic questions.
Yeah, that's science.
For me, the Earth is obviously and observably flat. Nathan Oakley. And that's what I've shown. And I don't know that. And you know what? We would have to go out and do it ourselves. That's what we probably have to do.
Well, you could always.
But you would also have to show some.
Check these distances here.
You also have to show some numbers of what's actually occluded, what is actually behind the curve. We did it at 50. We did 100. We can even go farther. I'm not a photographer, but there are farther pictures. You can say that they're mirages. That's fine. Let that be your answer. But you need to have some kind of number.
Well, yeah, I
your
need
number
numbers.
is 5,400 feet is occluded at 100 miles, and I don't see it. True, you know, I see what you're saying. You know, when we were kids, we would jump in the tree, and we would see farther. You know, and it wasn't because the Earth was bending; it's because we have a higher perspective, and I get that. So your point makes sense, but there's no.
Okay, well, I just looked at the value. People are saying it's not even 100 miles; it's 55, and they're also using an observer height of several hundred meters for the mountain that they're standing on to take that picture. So that does change the equation drastically.
Well, if it's 55, then this is the same thing as the Chicago skyline, which was 50. And I might be wrong. I just pulled these up. You know, not a scientist. Let's say there might be 50. Okay, so we're back to your 41, 120 feet, which we can't tell. Well, I mean, we can move on, but in the future, if we do a debate again, I might want to show another picture that's more verifiably 100 miles. I could, and then we can see if we see it. If we do, then you have to adjust your equation, and you have to explain how we can see those objects.
Hang on. Let me just look up the height of Mount Snowdon, which is apparently what you're looking at here. Because I'm about to solve.
Hang on. I see all the mountains. I see. If I expand this, I see 13, 14 mountains here. So you don't have to go by the highest one. Go by the lowest one.
Okay. What's the height of the lowest one?
I don't know, but you're obviously going by the height of the highest one.
Okay.
So
it's not going to be accurate.
Given a distance,
I can see all these mountains.
Let me finish. Given a distance of 55 miles and an observer height of 100 meters, because they're on the slope of a mountain looking at some other mountains, the height that's obscured at this distance is 211 meters. Mount Snowdon, which is in that picture you showed, is 1,000 meters tall. That's why you can see them.
That would equate to my 3,700 feet, and you're saying it's 3,000 feet. Let's say it's 3,000 feet. That's actually better for the flat Earth argument. And you're saying 200 meters, so that's 600 feet.
Yes.
So 600 feet.
Yeah.
So we probably won't get a result with that.
You can't see the face of any of those.
You can't tell. 600 feet would be the amount occluded by the atmosphere. So.
Well, not by the
atmosphere. I want to just go on record to say Tim, I don't see a curvature at all on these. We can find a better one that's 100. We're not going to do that today. We're not gonna do it today, but
Michael, just let me interject here, okay? Because I do hear this
Yeah.
constantly, and I just want to raise my point about this. Here. So what I'm gonna do is do this, okay? Share this. We'll erase this. Given some curve, I'll actually zoom out. Given some curve, I zoom in a lot. It's gonna look flat. Now, it would be very convenient if someone 300 years ago figured this out, that by zooming in on a small portion of a curve, it looks like a line, and then developed a whole field of math called calculus around it. No, actually, that's exactly what happened. That's why I can do these equations. So the fact that you are not because you're looking at a small subset, that doesn't mean anything. Actually, if you went back to my graph, which I already shared with you, so you can always pull up the link, even when it's zoomed in, it looks like a flat line, but when you zoom out, it goes back to being a curved space. You can't just look at a small section of land and go, this is flat, therefore the whole thing's flat.
Right. But we're talking about distant objects at 50 miles and
That
longer.
are
We
visible.
need to see what's occluded for sure to be more exact, and we have to improve our pictures and our evidence to do that. And thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
I have one more point, but you if you have a point, you can go next if you want. I have another point, and that's the end of mine.
Okay. Well, this point isn't directly towards flat Earth, so to speak, but it is an argument by flat earthers that I think that needs to be addressed. The whole gravity doesn't cause downward acceleration; it's density. Here, Eric, you a proponent of that?
You said gravity, right?
Yes. Do you think gravity is a thing, or is just density?
I think gravity is the thing. I think gravity is what we describe that why people fall off the edge of a cliff.
Now, what causes that force?
Why things fall down?
Yeah.
And I also understand that gravity is a theory. Am I right?
No, gravity is a phenomenon. Gravitational theory describes the phenomenon. Cell theory describes what we know about cells. I can take a microscope and show you the cells. I can do an experiment and show you the gravitational attraction. It's a fact. The theory just describes the fact.
But isn't gravity a theory?
Gravitational theory is a theory because it's in the name. The gravity itself, the phenomena that the theory describes, is just a phenomena. It's something that exists.
Okay, so I know you guys have sciencey answers about this, but I just want to talk to the layman people. When you say theory, that means like a hunch. This is I have a theory on how you got home without a car from the grocery store. I think you took an Uber. You probably stopped at your friend's house, and that's why you got home late. That's my theory.
That's not what theory means in science. Theory means our most accurate description of something that has predictive powers that's based on empirical evidence. And when I say predictive power, it means I can do some calculations, predict what the end result will be, and then do the experiment and have the experimental data back up my predictions. That's what a theory is in science. That's the short version of what a theory is in science.
Okay, thank you, Jack. That sounds impressive, but there's something I believe it's more paramount than a theory is a law, is a scientific law.
Could I?
No.
Could I hold on just a second? Could I just interject? So that when scientists use the word theory, they use the scientific word for theory, not the common parlance word. And so, from Berkeley, they have an excellent site that defines a lot of things about science. And so they explain scientific theories are broad explanations for a wide range of phenomenon. They're concise, coherent, systematic, and can be used to make predictions about many different sorts of situations. A theory is most acceptable to the scientific community when it's strongly supported by many different lines of evidence. But even theories may be modified or overturned if warranted by new evidence and perspectives. So it is not a hunch when scientists talk about theory. So if you hear about the theory of relativity, it is a specific. It's referring to that.
Okay, thank you. Can you reread the last sentence you said about it could be revised?
Even theories may be modified or overturned if warranted by new evidence and perspectives.
So if someone showed that a building does not fall behind the cover of the earth, that could be warranted new evidence.
Yes. Sure.
Yep.
If you do the
really good science, maybe. Yep.
Thank you, Toon, for reading that. Can you please also, you're going to read the theory. Can you please also read the law, the scientific law?
Sure.
You want me to
explain the theory?
Because the short version is little.
I'll read the same one.
Well,
from the same source here.
I wanted to read.
Let's see. They have scientific laws. They have they may have exceptions, and like other scientific knowledge, may be modified or rejected based on new evidence and perspectives. In science, the term law usually refers to a generalization about data and is a compact way of describing what we'd expect to happen in a particular situation. Some laws are non-mechanistic statements about the relationship among observable phenomena. For example, the ideal gas law describes how the pressure, volume, and temperature of a particular amount of gas are related to one another. It does not describe how gases must behave. We know that gases do not precisely conform to the ideal gas law. Other laws deal with phenomena that are not directly observable. For example, the second law of thermodynamics deals with entropy, which is not directly observable in the same way that volume and pressure are. Still, other laws offer more mechanistic explanations of phenomenon. For example, Mendel's first law offers a model of how genes are distributed to gametes and offspring that help us make predictions about the outcome of genetic crosses. The term law may be used to describe many different forms of scientific knowledge, and whether or not a particular idea is called a law has much to do with its discipline and the time period in which it was first developed. So, sorry it's kind of long, but it bears saying.
Thank you, MC Toon. Okay, well, thank you for that. On your question about the gravity, I think there's gravity, what we call gravity, but I want the layman to understand, and also the people listening that aren't scientists, that you have something called density and buoyancy. And for example, if you had a liquid bowl of mercury, you can put a quarter right on top, it'll float right on top. Penny a dime, it will not sink. And that's not because of gravity, that's because the density of the mercury liquid keeps that quarter up there floating.
Yeah, because gravity acts downward, not upwards.
You said upwards. Well, you tell you what, the quarter is being pushed upwards. Am I right?
Yeah, by buoyancy, and gravity is pushing it downwards. They balance each other, so that way there's no acceleration.
Right. So you're saying that you're calling it gravity. Well, I'm saying that you can achieve that without gravity. You can achieve that because
gravity
the liquid and the is denser, okay, and the quarter is less dense. It floats on top of the mercury, just like you can put a cup of oil. You can pour water on top of that cup of oil, and if you do it just so easily and smoothly, the water will stay above the oil because the oil is thicker and denser. Am I right?
Yeah.
Let's say motor oil. So you're calling it gravity. I'm calling it density and buoyancy.
No. We're calling two things. Density and gravity are two very different things. Density is the amount of mass in any given amount of volume. Gravity is a force between objects. So here, let me explain this one. I'll go back to the present mode.
And if you can dumb it down so we're it's just basic terms.
I'll dumb it down as much as I
can.
Sure. Dumb it down a lot. Okay. So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say there's two forces acting on it, one that acts upwards and one that acts downwards. We'll call this F1 and this F2. Now, if F1 plus F2 is equal to 0, that implies acceleration is 0. So if I have an object, let's say, I don't know, a thing of metal, that's resting on the surface of some liquid that's denser than it, and the object is just sitting there, there's no acceleration because its velocity isn't changing. And the reason that is because there is a force of buoyancy, Fb, that is equal in magnitude to the force of gravity. Is that correct? Ian?
That's fine. You have more though. Continue, don't you?
Okay. So let's just do a simple test to see if accelerating downwards is because of density or not. Okay? Does that sound fair?
Are you saying the acceleration downwards is important? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because there's some forces causing objects to accelerate downwards.
There's forces.
Yes, there's a force that's causing
Can you
objects to
define?
accelerate downwards.
Can you define force?
A force is something that is an interaction between objects that causes their velocity to change.
Velocity. Okay, good. Okay.
So it's,
Um,
in very simple terms, if something is speeding up or slowing down, there's a force acting on it.
right. So I have a question.
Sure.
I'm talking about buoyancy and density, and you're talking about gravity and forces, right? So let me say
Gravity is
this.
a force
When
and buoyancy is also a force.
when I light a fire, the smoke goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean the force is going up?
There's a net force going up, but gravity is still there. There's just
Okay,
another
well,
force.
I'm just showing you an example how if I light a fire, if you go to a campfire, a big one, and you put your hand over that fire, is the fire going down or going up?
There's hot gases moving up.
And you would be burned, wouldn't you, if you put your hand right up by that fire?
Correct.
So gravity's not pulling it down.
No, it is pulling it down. It's just that gravity is
Gravity's
not
pulling the
how
fire
do
down. I just want to be clear. Gravity's pulling the fire down.
It's causing acceleration that's going downwards.
But the fire's going up though, in this case.
I can jump up and come back down. I will have an initial velocity that's upwards, but it will eventually come back down. The smoke that goes up doesn't go all the way up into space.
You just said if you jumped up, is that the same thing? If you jumped up, you come back down?
Jump up. Here, I'll even draw it out for you, okay? Here's me. I jump up. My initial velocity, VI, is pointed upwards. Eventually, get this, I'll be moving downwards. My VF is downwards.
But do you see? Okay, that's great, and that works, and that's true. But do you see that you're denser than the air, so that's why you come down? Do you see that?
Yes, but that doesn't. Oh, for fuck's sakes! Gravity is still pulling me downwards. But if I was not as dense as the air, then it would be acting on me less than it would the air, and so the air is going to rush underneath me and push me upwards. If the force that acts,
You say the
that acts
air
upwards
rushes
exceeds
underneath you
gravity,
and pushes you upwards. Is that what you said?
let me put this in very simple terms for you. Okay, if some force, let's just call it FA, applied force, if FA, the magnitude, exceeds the magnitude of FG, gravity, you will accelerate up.
Yes. If you jumped off the ground, you would accelerate up. If I threw a ball up,
No,
it would
no,
go
if I
up.
jumped up,
You
I'll
get that?
accelerate downwards.
And that's a force up, right? It's going up, right? I threw a ball up, you jumped up. That's a vector. Yes.
The velocity vector is pointed up initially. The gravity vector is always pointed downwards.
Right. But you're trying to explain how gravity pulls things down. I'm saying
It will always
you
act
can
downwards.
exchange that with buoyancy and density. That's what I'm saying. And let me use an example, okay?
Okay.
You remember when you were a kid, you had a balloon, you let the balloon go, and the balloon slipped out of your hand. It starts slow. That balloon, first of all, it's helium, right? Goes up. Helium is light, right? So it goes up, right? Because it's lighter than the air. Okay, that's my point. You let the balloon go. I notice it starts off slow. You have a moment to grab it, but if you let it keep going up, it's going to go faster.
Because it accelerates upwards from.
It does accelerate upwards, though gravity.
Gravity is still acting downwards, but there's another force that exceeds it. This is what this means here. If FA is greater than FG, it will accelerate upwards.
Okay.
Gravity is one force. There can be more than one force acting on an object.
Well, we're just talking about, you mentioned gravity, so let's keep it to gravity unless there's another force that is going to make something go up faster and make smoke go up and make fire go up. And you're saying gravity is pulling everything down. And I'm saying it's density and buoyancy. How many people do we have in the chat, Tune?
I'll check. 162.
Is there anybody that's can comment on this. Like I'm saying that if it's lighter, it goes up higher, and if it's heavier, it comes down lower, and that's because of the density and buoyancy. And he's saying gravity's pulling everything down.
Yes, gravity pulls everything
someone
down.
in the chat. Someone in the chat.
Okay, here. Let me ask you this, Eric.
I want to see what they're saying.
Okay.
All right, people. What do you think is making the balloon go up?
He's saying because Jack just said it's gravity.
Gravity does not make something go up. Jeez. It's one force that's acting downwards.
So gravity is part of the equation for buoyancy. Is let's see, the upward force of buoyancy from Team Skeptic. The buoyant force exceeds the gravitational force, it goes up. Gravity makes it goes up, says the Snark. Point and Laugh says pushity. That's a new one. Earthrise says you can't have buoyancy without gravity. Johnny B says it all only works with gravity. Gravity pulls the air down, and that pushes the balloon up. But that's my favorite there. I Am Hip says money makes the world go round. I don't know how that works. Baron Von G, gravity is acceleration, not simply falling. Let's see. Alex Alford says,
I showed acceleration on the balloon as the example.
Yes, yeah, buoyancy accelerates it upwards, and part of the equation for buoyancy is gravity.
Right. Well, this is obviously I have a real basic example, and I just wanted to say that flat earthers in general are saying that gravity is a theory. It's not proven that it's a theory.
That's not how a theory works, mate.
Things go down, yes, but you can say if there's air and it's heavy, they'll fall through the air. And guess what? The balloons go up, the smoke goes up, the fire goes up, and that's because they're lighter.
Okay, how about I just give you a real simple experiment for you to do?
Hold on. Round Thinker says...
And I know you guys learned that in school, so you're going to say, hey, it's gravity. It's in my school book, so it must be true.
No, we can.
But I'm showing it.
We can.
Michael, can I get a word
formulas for it, and it confirms.
Here, let's use a really simple experiment, guys. Okay, so here, Eric, you think that? No. You've had your little tangent here. Now it's my turn. If you increase the density, and it's usually denoted by rho, if I make this bigger, here, I'll even write it out in big words for you. If I make this bigger, will it accelerate downwards faster? Yes or no? If density
increases, what is bigger? Just
density.
Say it a different way.
If I increase density, will accelerate downwards faster?
I think things fall at the same as long as there's not air turbulence, air pressure, they fall at the same rate. Yes.
Not in an atmosphere.
Well, yeah. If you drop the feather, it glides on the air, so it's slower, right?
Okay, yeah. Well, think of it this way.
Then your quota would drop faster. Is that your point? Yes.
If you think downwards acceleration is caused by density, then we can use the transitive property here that if we increase density, it should accelerate faster. That is not the case. And there's two ways to demonstrate this. One requires you setting up a vacuum chamber, which is a little expensive. The other way involves a very simple experiment, which I'll just explain for the audience, okay?
I want to be clear.
Hold on a second. Something happened to your audio, Jack. Yeah, Jack, your audio just went crazy, and it's super loud. Yeah, it's still going crazy. It's very loud. You can see on your screen, like your meters are going up and down a lot. So maybe you can switch your input source. No, he left the call. He'll probably pop back in and see what happened. That was weird. Oh, yeah, it's still, I think it's looping or something back into itself. Yeah, that's not going to work. I have you down in the live stream so nobody hears it, because it's pretty crazy. Can you, down in the lower right-hand corner of the screen is the 3 dots. Can you click that and then pick your input source? So if down in the lower right it says more options, there's the 3 vertical dots. If you click that and then go to settings, then you can pick your input, your microphone and your speakers. But I don't know, you said you're on an iPad? Do you have Bluetooth connected? Oh, there, something just changed. Now it works.
Okay.
I can hear you clear now.
Okay, so let's just go back to our little, my very simple experiment that anyone can try it out. Okay. It's quite simple, really. All you need, oh Jesus Christ, get multiple objects that are of similar shape and varying density. Buy it off eBay if you have to. Now, let's just, I'll come up with some arbitrary numbers here and I'll just explain the implications. Let's start off with some density, row 1. And then I have another object that's, say, 5 times denser. So we have 5 row 1. And we have another object that's, say, 100 times denser, 100 row 1. As I increase the density by ever increasing the balance acceleration caused by density, I should also see increasing amounts of acceleration and increasing increments. This is not the case when we demonstrate this empirically. They converge on a value, which is the gravitational acceleration. And in fact, here, let me just switch to my phone here so that I can just demonstrate something for you real quick, okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, stop sharing. Give me one moment.
MC Kim?
Yes.
Are you gonna rap for us tonight?
Am I gonna rap? Seriously, you don't want me to say anything about 2 trailer park girls go round the outside. Round the outside.
I'll tell you what, I have a
round
rap.
The outside.
I have a rap I want to honor you with. If you can play a rap on the way out as we exit the
Let me just log off this
debate.
one. Okay, so it should just be my phone now, right?
Yeah, just one now.
You sound fine.
Okay, now let me see if I can flip the camera around because the app's a little finicky. Switch camera. Okay, so I'm gonna get something really dense. Give me one sec. What do I have under here that I can work with? I'll do.
We get to see Jack's dorm room.
Yeah. How's that for a textbook? University physics. And
Are you in college?
University.
He is.
Excuse me. University. Sorry.
Yes.
In Canada.
Does that mean it's an 8-year?
In Canada, there's a
Does that mean it's a doctorate degree?
Okay, so
I think he's working on his
one
master's.
of these steps, the textbook or the tissue paper. Which one?
Well, let's say the textbook falls faster, right?
So what happens if I place the tissue on top of the textbook and I drop it?
Well, the tissue might lift up, but if it doesn't lift up, it will also drop faster than it will drop it.
Nope.
There you go.
It stays right on top.
Okay.
Now, if I was to drop it just on its own, notice how it floats down. But when it's on top of an object, it's always at the same rate as a textbook.
Yes.
Now, there's a reason for that. There's no drag acting on the tissue paper because it's sandwiched right against a heavy textbook. And so it's going to accelerate at the same rate as the textbook, where the force of drag on it is basically negligible because the force of gravity is so much greater.
Okay.
And you can do this at home. Take a heavy object, put a little tissue paper on it, and drop it and see how fast it accelerates.
Okay. Well, that's a good example, actually.
Yeah. So if you were to say that if downwards acceleration is caused by density, there's no reason for a tissue paper to accelerate at the same rate as a heavy-ass textbook.
I don't know that. I think you're saying that.
Well, you can test it yourself. Might be true. So how would you relate downward acceleration to density then?
Why would that prove anything?
Because if density was a parameter that would affect downward acceleration, increasing density, because you think that a denser object should accelerate faster. If we increase the density, then therefore it should accelerate faster. But when we did our test, we had one object that was density. Yeah. The downward acting force should have been much greater, and therefore much greater acceleration on the textbook than it was on the tissue paper. And yet they accelerated at the exact same rate. And you just saw that.
You did a great example, but I think you're conflating two things.
What am I conflating?
We discussed that toilet paper will fall slower because of the air. It glides on the air, and the book will fall much faster because it does not. And just because
it has a much greater surface area, actually, so it has more drag.
It does have a greater surface area. It does have more drag. But as you can see, it floats down because it's floating down with the air. And that's
besides the point. We can isolate for these forces. One of them acts downwards, one of them acts upwards. The one that acts upwards is drag. Drag acts on the textbook greater than it does on the tissue paper. And yet, even though there's no upwards acting force on the tissue paper, it's tiny. Its density is tiny. So if it was down to density for it to accelerate downwards, then it should accelerate at a very slow rate, even without drag. And yet it will perfectly match that of a heavy object. I've actually done an experiment with a couple of friends in high school where we set up a vacuum chamber and we dropped two objects, one steel ball and a feather. They accelerate at the exact same rate, meaning when you take out the force of drag and you only have a downwards acting force, it acts on two different objects such that it gives the exact same acceleration. This is perfectly explained by gravity. It is not explained by density because those two objects have different densities. So when you isolate for the downwards acting force and downwards acting acceleration, you should have two different accelerations for two different objects of different densities.
Okay, you're making a good point. You're saying that in a vacuum chamber,
so there's no other force. It's just the downwards acting
force. The same speed. They fall at the same speed.
Yes, they fall at the same rate.
And that's your explanation why there's gravity?
That's how we know that density cannot be it. Because the surrounding medium has a density of basically 0. And both of these objects have two non-zero densities. But one of them is much larger than the other. So therefore, it should fall much faster. But it doesn't. And that tells us that one of the parameters that affects downwards acting force cannot be density.
I don't know how you can conclude
if
that.
I make density
that might
greater,
be true.
And you think that makes downwards acting force greater, that should become apparent when we isolate for the downwards force. That's not what you get in actual experiments.
I was explaining how things will fall through the air. The air is less dense than the items they fall through. And
both of those objects
that the toilet paper falls
more
slower.
dense than the than the medium they fall through.
You still need buoyancy and density. If you laid that book on a pool of mercury, it might float to some degree.
No, it won't. I already know the density of these objects. They will not. And I know the force of gravity. I know what forces act on them. That's the benefit of actually understanding physics.
Well, you have a good example. I don't know that you're proving gravity by dropping a book and having a piece of toilet paper on top of it.
If you think density causes things to accelerate downwards, why can't I get acceleration to increase when I increase density?
I mean, that's a good physics question.
That's a good question for you if you're gonna try.
I've never done it myself. I've never done it myself. But
try it.
You're still dropping heavy objects through less dense mediums, which mean that there's buoyancy involved.
Yes, but the paper is falling. It actually falls faster than the textbook. That's why it remains pressed against the textbook. The paper doesn't have an upwards acting force on it. The textbook does. It's basically almost, it might as well not be there, but it is still there. That's why the paper is still against that textbook. Because it wants to fall faster than the textbook will allow it to.
That's your explanation. That's fine. We can move on.
Okay. Here, we're running out of time here, so how about you just give your last point, and then I'll give you my rebuttal.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, by the way. I wasn't trying to pest you with that. Just an example of things can float upwards also. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's move on.
I know how things can float, mate.
This one's a really basic one. And I want to bring it to like a really layman, even childlike example, so there's no misinterpretation.
Sure.
Okay. You don't need physics to determine this. You don't need rocket science. All right. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah, you're coming through fine.
All right. So this one isn't so much that the Earth is flat, but it's the Earth spinning. That's the question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We talked about spinning balls in the classroom. We're taught, as we go into first grade, that there's a globe in the classroom. How much effort is put into that globe to show us that we live in a globe in first grade? When these people, when they're just learning how to, before they can really even think critically, okay, we're hit with that globe, and we're hit in the movies with globes, and we're hit in the school books, in the advertisements with globes and spinning balls. So of course we believe it. Okay, we believe it whether it's true or not, because we've been hit since we were kids. Okay, but what if you have, for example, let me show you that there's a globe. Like I'm holding a ball. Okay,
sure.
And let's take this pencil top. Okay. See that? This is a plane flying over a curve. Okay.
Back to the plane. We've already gone through this, mate.
But I'm showing you a different example. Here's a ball. Okay.
Sure.
Here's a plane. Okay. It's going over the ball. All right. And this is different because I'm showing you it doesn't move. This is my point. Okay, you're saying it moves. It's not about it flat around. If this ball, by the way, this ball is spinning supposedly, yes or no?
Yeah, it's spinning.
Supposed globe. Okay, let's say it's. So I'm gonna bring this. My first example was that it's going on the curve, so it's going down. And you explained you can't tell. Okay, great. Good answer. You can't tell, but it is. Okay, so now this plane is leaving from Chile and it's going to go to China over here. Okay, 180 degrees. All right.
Yes, sure. Around about.
So it's flying over like this. Okay. And let's say the runway is here on this white. See it? This is the runway. Okay, now it's flying over here. Okay. It's gonna land on the runway. But now we're gonna start spinning the ball ever so slowly. Okay. What happens is the ball starts pulling away from the plane. Yes?
Uh-huh.
Do you see how the ground below pulls away from the plane?
Not pulls away, but yeah, sure. It's moving.
In this case, it's actually pulling toward. Let me turn it this way.
Okay.
Okay.
I get
so
what
now
you're
saying. Your runway is getting away from you. Okay. Now the question is, does the plane fly independently, or is it somehow tugged by this ball that's pulled? Does the ball tug the plane, or is the plane flying the plane flies in a circle? It's not flying independently, or somehow is this ball tugging the plane along?
Here, how's this, mate? I'll go back to my tablet and then I can probably.
My point is, let me just finish.
Okay.
My point is, if this ball was spinning, this plane would get left behind. And at the equator, spinning 1,000 miles. Okay, planes fly what, 500?
I'm sorry. So say that again. Say that last part.
At the equator, it's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, right?
Relative to the center of the Earth.
And the plane flies 500 miles an hour. Yes.
Relative to the surface
I understand that a building would move. Yes, a building would move with a spinning globe. But a plane is independent flight.
No, but
that would get left behind on a spinning Earth. And how would you land on a runway if it's spinning? And
I can explain that.
Here's a question for you: does the ball somehow tug the plane along as it's spinning like this, Does the ball somehow drag it along with what gravity? Or is it playing
Yeah, I
fine
can explain
independently
that
and have to catch up? And how does it land on that runway on a spinning target? That's a
I can
really
explain that if you
basic
want.
example. Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So I guess I'll explain.
One more thing. I'm sorry. Have you ever felt the Earth move, spin?
Felt the Earth move. Okay, let me make this very
Have
clear.
you felt-
Earth spins at 15 degrees per hour. You're not gonna recognize that. I mean, I can watch something go from, say, sunrise to sunset. I can watch the sun move because the Earth rotates, but I can't feel it myself. But I can, in fact, measure it, and I can explain to you how you can measure it too. And this one is independent of stars or sun or the moon. It just requires yourself in a scale.
You said degrees again. I think that's people can't feel degrees. They feel feet. They feel miles. You're saying degrees, but it's 1,000 miles an hour. And if you want to go, let's say at 90 degrees, it's going to be what, 500 miles an hour?
No.
When you say 15 degrees, I'm saying miles an hour.
Okay, let me explain something very simple. Okay.
Wait, do you think the Earth does not spin 1,000 miles an hour? Do you think that
I can explain this to you, but you have to let me finish.
Okay, go ahead. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, go back to my trusty OneNote. There we go. Yeah. Go away. Hey, wait. Okay, let's draw ourselves another circle. So when we say something moves at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, here's what we mean. If we were to look at the speed of the object at any point along the equator, it is moving at 1,000 miles per hour relative to the center of the Earth. Now, when we say degrees per second, we mean how fast does it rotate? Because 1,000 miles per hour in a circular motion results in you spinning at different rates at different radiuses. So, for example, if I was spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at that radius, I would be spinning around ridiculously fast. But here, I'm only moving at 15 degrees per hour. That's ridiculously slow.
Wait. Where's here? I'm sorry. You said it. We agree on 1,000 miles an hour. Okay.
At the equator. That's the only place where that exists.
Oh, so it spins faster at the equator and slower like at the North Pole?
Yeah, it's 0 at the North Pole.
So we got to explain the plane then, because the plane doesn't have to worry about the Earth spinning, does it? Because how is it going to land on that runway?
Okay, so first of all, let's get this out of the way. And it's called relative motion. So if I'm, here's one object and here's another object. Let's say this one is moving this way at 1,000 miles per hour. All right? So that's sort of how you're right now imagining the Earth or the surface of the Earth moving relative to a plane. That's not how this works. First of all,
you're drawing a straight line. It's curving around in the ball. If it continued in one day, it would come back to this.
We're only looking at one specific instance,
so you would have to curve it down. Just saying.
Which is why we're drawing a vector in straight lines, because vectors are
down, not a straight line.
No. We're only looking at one snapshot in time, just to keep things simple, because I know you love how you want to explain things to laymen. So I'm keeping it very simple, okay? You don't need to curve things to understand a basic concept like relative motion. So just let me finish, and then I'll give you your chance to respond.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. If I have one object that's at rest with the other, in other words, this object is moving at the same speed as this object, and I am in a car. I'll just delete all this. And I am in a car that's moving at 60 miles an hour. Both of these things relative to me are moving at 60 miles per hour. So if we go back to the Earth, the surface of the Earth at this point is moving at 1,000 miles per hour. So is a plane that starts at that position. If it were to move at 500 miles per hour west, that's relative to the surface of the Earth. And so it's still moving at 500 miles per hour in this direction relative to the center of the Earth. That's what this distance or this velocity is with respect to. So you need to understand what reference frame you're using your velocities for. Now, there is a correction, because basically if I was to draw another circle, and this time I'll draw another line. This represents the north-south axis. Every point on Earth spins in the same direction, west to east. And that means that the greater the velocity, or the greater the radius, the greater the velocity. That's why at the North Pole, where the radius of the circular motion of the latitude line is 0, the velocity is also 0. Here is where radius is biggest. That's why the velocity there is the biggest. Here, it's going to be somewhere between 0. So 0 is less than the v here, which is less than 1,000 in miles per hour. That's what causes what's known as a Coriolis force. And we can compensate for that just by turning the plane ever so slightly. Because what's going to happen is, and I'll just draw a little cross-section here. The plane starts at some very far off southern point here. Let's say close to the equator, which is here. Equator. And it wants to get to this point. The air is moving roughly at the same speed as the ground is. And what we're going to notice is the speed is greatest here, and it's going to slowly drop off. And so what that's going to mean is the air relative to the plane is going to start pushing in the other direction. Because the plane is going to go like that, basically. Because it's moving at some velocity, 1,000 miles per hour here. The surface of the Earth is moving at 0 at the North Pole. Because it's also moving at 1,000 miles per hour here, the plane is stationary when it's sitting on the tarmac at the equator. Because it didn't immediately move to the North Pole, it's moving on the tarmac. This rightward deviation. And all you have to do to compensate for this is just point the plane to the left, and the force of thrust will cancel out that rightward velocity. So it is, in fact, something that's taken into account by autopilots, which is why international airliners don't end up way off course. So that's my answer to you.
I noticed, thank you, by the way. I noticed you rely a lot on autopilots.
Well, it is what does the corrections. So you can, if you want to see it happen in action, just look at the software code. The pilots, basically, they're only there on international flights in case something goes wrong and to taxi the plane, take off, and land.
Right, so in case autopilot crapped out, you have a pilot there that can do it by hand, yes?
It would not be as efficient. You fly basically in a less efficient route because you need to change things constantly. A pilot can only eyeball it so well. And frankly, if the autopilot craps out, they're probably going to go land as soon as they can.
So are you saying that the supposed globe below tugs the plane along with it as it's spinning?
It's not tugging the plane. It's just that if two objects start off at the same place and at the same speed, their relative velocity is 0. Some other object can be moving relative to both of them, but the speed between those two
start off at the same place. Okay. So I think I know what you're saying. You're saying that if I'm on a car moving and I throw a ball, the ball's also moving, right, with the car.
Yes.
I get that. Okay, but this is not the same example. Okay, because if you have a plane and you fly in a circle, there's no more velocity left on that plane. There's no more velocity left. The velocity's gone. You just flew in a circle after you took off. The plane is flying independent, and my point is, if the plane's flying independent,
it's not independent.
What's Newton's first law of motion?
Before you answer that, I just want to make this very clear, okay? If I am on a boat, or actually, let's say I'm on a speedboat that moves along at 200 miles per hour, I jump in the air. I'm not going to fly backwards. I'm basically going to fly, or I'm going to land back exactly where I started, assuming there's something to shield me from the wind. So if I'm inside a cabin and I jump up, or actually just go ride a plane, it's moving at 500 miles per hour, jump up, you're not going to go shooting back. You're coming exactly right back down. Because the velocity between you and the plane is 0, the velocity between me and this boat is 0, and the velocity between a plane and wherever it starts off is going to be 0. And when it flies, let's say 500 miles per hour, that's 500 miles per hour relative to the ground, not relative to the center of the Earth.
Okay, so you're saying the Earth is a boat It's a boat going across water.
Not a boat, but it is just an example of a frame of reference, basically.
Okay, that's not the example I mentioned. I'm talking about a spinning ball. If you
I
took
could
a
have a
log,
spinning ball
you know
too.
those logs that turn around, those logs that turn. I spun the ball for you. Okay, different example. Those logs that turn around in the water, it's hard to balance yourself because they're spinning. If you start spinning the log, you would fall off. Okay, the example wasn't that you would get thrown back, that the log would spin underneath you, and you wouldn't be tugged along with the log. That's my example. And you're talking about a boat, which is different.
Because the force that causes the log to spin is different from what's causing you to move. Those are different phenomena. You're using an apples to oranges comparison here. If I'm on a spinning that's moving, I'm going to be
my example is the sphere that goes around.
Yes.
And you're talking about going straight, so it's completely different.
No. Frame of references doesn't care if you're spinning around or not. Here, I'll even do another separate illustration for you.
Let me do this. This is my point, because I think you're getting off track. You said a boat, right? You said a boat, right?
Here.
Take this boat that's flying over the water. Okay. Now let's put a big beach ball on the boat and start spinning the beach ball. Put you on top of it, and see what happens. That ball's going to spin on your feet.
No.
A basic example.
Here's the surface of the Earth, okay? Here's a cross-section. It's spinning. I'm standing here. I'm also moving at the same velocity. If I jump up, I'm going to go up and back down. And the ground beneath me will have also moved. So my velocity relative to the ground, that little reference point, is 0. If I'm flying at 500 miles per hour, relative to this point here, which is moving at 200 miles per hour, relative to the center of the Earth, I'm moving at 700 miles per hour relative to the center of the Earth. Frames of reference matter. Do you understand that?
I'm sorry, I missed the last thing you said.
If I'm moving at 500 miles per hour relative to this point on the surface of the Earth, and that point on the surface of the Earth is moving at 200 miles per hour relative to the center of the Earth, I am moving relative to the center of the Earth 700 miles per hour. Speeds are based upon frames of reference. You can't just say this doesn't work out because I switched my frames of reference, but I didn't bother to do the correct conversion. That's a arithmetic error. That's not a problem with a round Earth.
I'm showing you a spinning ball that's spinning, and you're saying it's going straight, and that's why
I just showed you a diagram of a rotating planet and a person who's on that rotating planet. I don't know how much more simple I can get.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying we don't get pushed back because it's flat, man. It's not spinning. It's not spinning. If it was a stationary planet, you wouldn't have to worry about getting thrown back because it's not moving.
And if it was moving, you wouldn't have to worry about getting
thrown back
when it's moving at such a slow speed.
If it's moving, it would spin under you. It would spin under the plane. Planes flying independently.
They're not independent. They don't just suddenly have a whole different velocity as soon as they take off. If they're moving at 200 miles per hour relative to the ground, that's going to be a different velocity with respect to another reference point. If I jump up in the air, I'm not going to shoot back because the thing beneath me is moving. In a circular movement or not, I'm moving at the same initial rate as whatever is beneath me. I'm accelerated at the same rate as whatever is initially beneath me. I'm going to land at the same place.
If you had a jetpack and you got off that boat that's going 200 miles an hour, it would leave you behind. Once you lost the initial velocity of that boat, once you flew up a little bit in a jetpack or in a helicopter or in a balloon, that boat would leave you behind. Yes or no?
Force of drag, yes. If there wasn't a force of drag, then no.
And this is my example. It's independent flight. There's no vector. There's no.
What do you mean there's no vector?
Your starting position, okay. You're not connected to the boat anymore. Once you fly independently up, whether it's a balloon or a jetpack, we want to use a helicopter, okay. You're not with that momentum of the boat anymore, and the boat's going to leave you behind.
No, you won't.
And you're not flying 200 miles. You're saying you are.
As long as you compensate for the force of drag, you will not get left behind. Drag is independent of the motion of the Earth. Drag is just caused by you moving through air.
All right.
It wasn't. I wasn't saying
Have a
drag.
certain amount of
I
power
didn't
relative
bring
to
drag
air.
into it.
You're gonna get drag.
All right. I think
I didn't
this
bring
is
drag
kind of
into it.
we've exhausted that one. I would say that maybe have a look at Newton's first law of motion to get a better understanding of that. But it's been over 2 hours, and we think it's time to start wrapping up here.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Do you have the? By the way, thank you, Jack, and I appreciate your tenacity and your patience.
Mhm.
And thank you, MC Toon. I appreciate that. You can. I want to honor you with this rap. I just
Oh,
put
no.
in the.
I'm gonna leave if we start rapping.
Is this?
I'm not rapping. I want to play it for you.
Is it
Oh,
is it
no.
going to?
Because I think it's excellent.
No.
Is it going to get?
Take
No,
away.
it's not. All right. I don't want to get. I see it. Hold on. I'll pull it up here. So we've got a Star Wars rap.
And I appreciate you guys.
Mhm.
So hold on. Let me get this.
Thank you, Jack.
And I'll put the volume up, and we can listen to it. Join my Discord server and send it there. Either way is fine. So, shoebox with sand. That's what it is. Yeah. So maybe a little better description. So another thing we're doing is let me get this here. There we go. We are doing with Round Thinker. We're doing on March about 20th. I think it's the 20th on the solstice here, the equinox. We're doing a measurement of the sun angle at local solar noon. Everybody's welcome to join. We have Tommy Gronwald is doing it from he's pretty far north, and he has a friend. We need to get in contact with him who's north of the Arctic Circle. I found somebody down in Chile, but I haven't heard back. I do have somebody on the equator, and some people in like Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa potentially. So a very wide range would be very good for people to get some measurements. So good. Tommy says he's working on it. So if you go to my website, I do have a link. mctoon.net is my website, and right on the website there is what is it? I'll get the link right at the top here, right after this broadcast on to where you can get some information on how to do the measurement. So let's see. Get a shoebox with sand in it, and throughout the day, line a straw with the sun so it has no shadow. Oh, so through the day you'll have a bunch of straws sticking out. That's pretty good. So there you go, and maybe I'll get you a little more on that, Godric.
Send me the link in the messenger, please.
Yeah, I will if I get more information. So
Another fun one is like if you ever go traveling, take an object and a really precise scale, like a kitchen scale, that's for measuring like fruits and stuff, and just measure how things change their weight the closer you are to the equator. Because you're spinning faster, which causes a greater centrifugal acceleration, which counteracts gravity, causing you to weigh.
Okay, you know what? This deserves a round two. Because are you saying that you can tell you weigh more at the equator? Is that what you said?
Way less, and yeah, I've measured it. I've done it before.
You weigh less.
Yep.
Okay. You know what? We gotta go round two on this.
All right.
So all right. Well,
if
thanks.
you'll have me.
Yeah. I think that's we can schedule something.
How many people are in the chat now? One.
Let's see. We're at 144.
Well, that's not too bad.
So yeah.
Got some people listening to you.
Yeah.
Hey, good luck on your channel, man.
Yeah.
I hope you get to 10,000 subscribers.
Me too. That'd be great. Anybody watching, click on the subscribe if you aren't already. If you liked this, go ahead and click like. If you didn't, click don't like, and then tell us all about it. And both Godric and Jack Zhang, you can find them on Quora. And I think that might be a good place to go
on
find
Quora,
them.
I'm under Eric Rodriguez. I'm probably the top Eric Rodriguez as far as got a few followers.
There you go.
And Godric is handle given to me, and it stuck with me.
All right.
Thank you.
There you go.
You can also look up flat Earth proponents on Quora, and also stock market traders. Those are two spaces that I run.
I've got a couple super chats here. We got Effie News says, why even debate after Black Swan? I know, it is good globe evidence. So the horizon is geometric now. Just because you don't understand, that's all right. Where is the science, Globey? He says. So a couple different times here. Effie News, let me know when you're ready for a debate here. So Cretan Bull for $2 Canadian says, I feel your pain, Jack. So thank you, everybody. Thank you to Jack. Thank you to Eric. And we will catch you all next week when I am on FTFE's channel with a rematch with Chris Martin. So we'll see you then. Thanks.
All right.
You're doing a debate with Chris Martin?
Yes. All right. Bye, everybody.
Okay, good luck on that, man. I'll check it out. Good night.